Okay, everybody, let's get your Bibles and let's turn to Genesis chapter 14. We're going to be looking at a big chunk today. We're going to be looking at verses 1 through 16. So we're just going to read it as we go through, a rather long passage. I want to recap for you. Remember, Abram and Lot have Splitsville. Lot saw that green grass over there by the Jordan River, and apparently Lot was all about the cash, and so he took what he thought was going to be the most profitable part of the country for his herds. Uh, they divided, for all intents and purposes, over money, uh, and so now they're doing their own things. Lot's moved over towards Sodom. Abram is in the hill country of Judea doing his thing, and we pick up the story in verse 1, chapter 14, verse 1. In the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goim, these kings made war with Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemimber, king of Zaboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. And all these joined forces in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. All right, so what we have setting up here, folks, is a war. In fact, folks, this is the first nations versus nations war that is recorded in scriptures. Now, we've had skirmishes before, but this think like a World War I, World War II thing. All right, the Axis and the Allies. Now, if you're wondering where all these places are, I know the map is not real clear, but you can see over here in the red, you have what's his name? Chedorlaomer. He's the Chedorlaomer. There we go. Chedorlaomer, he's the real bad guy. He's the king. He's the one running the show. They're from over there where Abram came from. This is the Mesopotamian Valley. This is the homeland of Babylon. And of course, actually there are four of them, I guess, five of them, these little city-states that are at the southern end of the Dead Sea. Now, these four over here, they're powerful. We're talking about the kingdom of the Elamites, the kingdom of the Babylonians, the kingdom of the Assyrians, and the Hittites. I mean, these are big, powerful kingdoms. So if you're looking at this and you've got those guys who have been causing trouble for centuries over there, and you've got these little guys over here, where are you putting your money? Most likely, you're going to go with the guys over in the Mesopotamian Valley. And they're not only coming after these five tiny city-states. Along the way, just for fun, they're going to start knocking off some others too. We'll get to that here in a moment. But first, Moses gives us a little backstory to help us understand why these four big kingdoms decide to go to war with these little guys. Look in verse 4. 12 years they had served Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. So number 2 in your notes, a rebellion is what has caused this war. Now, archaeology has shown us that during this time period, Elam was on the rise. They were ruling Mesopotamia. They had conquered Abram's homeland, again, the cities of Ur. In that area, they had control of the Transjordan region as well. How do we know that? Verse 4. Look at it there again. It says very clearly they served Chedorlaomer for 13 years. So he not only had control of the Mesopotamian Valley, but he also had control over on both sides of the Jordan River. So this is quite the little battle. By the way, this happened in the ancient world. The strongest king would go and conquer other kings and tell them, if you want to remain alive, if you want to remain a king, then it's going to cost you money. Tribute, right? So all these tiny city-states have been paying cheddar, I'm going to call him cheddar for short, cheddar for the right to exist. And for 12 years, they were doing this. But in the 13th year, for whatever reason, they didn't make their payment. And in Cheddar's mind, that's just full-blown rebellion right there. It's just rebellion. They had missed their payment. Now, I kind of admire the libertarian spirit that's going on here. But they had hacked off Chedorlaomer. He was upset. So apparently he had a meeting with all of his cronies, and he was like, hey guys, you want to go on a trip with me? We'll go down here. We'll conquer a bunch of places. We'll get us some stuff. We'll get us some slaves. We'll get us some cattle, maybe a little gold and silver. We'll split it all up. It'll be a great trip. Let's go do this together. Verse 5. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him came and defeated the Rephaim at Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zuzim in Ham, the Emim in Shavah Kerathaim, and the Horites in their hill country of Seir, as far as El Paran on the border of the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and defeated all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who were dwelling in Hazazon Tamar. Okay, so number 3 in your notes, the nations of Mesopotamia dominated this territory. Now, I put you a map, tried to make this as clear as I could. You'll notice that these people were unstoppable. These were the most powerful city-states, kingdoms in the world at this time. They come down out of the north, and they start on the east side of the Jordan River, and they just start knocking out these little cities. And really for no other reason than just they can, apparently. They got to pay for their trip somehow, right? Takes a lot of money to move horses and men and feed them. So they just start knocking out these city states. Now, one thing that is of interest is that most of these would be considered giant clans at the time. Rephaim is just another name for the Nephilim. Okay, Zuzim, the Zuzim, the Horites, all are connected with the giant clans of the time. Now, whether that's by coincidence or not, I don't know. Then they loop around into the Negev down south and knock out the Amalekites and the Amorites again. Names that are associated with the giant clans. The Bible is giving you this to say not only were they able to subjugate the people around the Dead Sea for 12 years, but the moment they rebelled, they just decimated the entire region. Again, not unusual for the time. Cheddar and his bunch, they were very powerful and they were very ruthless. There's just no mercy shown to anyone during these types of wars. Verse 8. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, the king of Bela, that is Zeor, went out, and they joined battle in the valley of Siddim. Now, I'll have you notice, if you can see just north of the Dead Sea, the valley of Siddim, that's where, right at the northern tip of the Dead Sea, is where we believe Siddim to be. Anyway, they joined battle in the valley of Siddim with Chedorlaomer, king of Elam. They have 4 kings. Okay, so it was 4 kings versus 5. Again, very powerful against not so much. So the combatants had been identified. The lines are now drawn. It's time to fight it out. And it goes very, very poorly for the little city-states along the Transjordan. Look in verse 10. Now the valley of Siddim was full of bitumen pits. We'll get to that here in just a minute. And as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, obviously the war is not going well, they fell into them and the rest fled to the hill country. So they joined battle, and the next thing we know, they're running for their lives. And Moses gives us this little tasty nugget here to understand how bad things are going, and also to help us understand Hebrew and the culture just a little bit better. First off, he tells us about bitumen pits. Bitumen is another word for tar. They were tar pits. But there's something very interesting here that I want you to notice. Here is the southern region there along the Dead Sea, just an example. These are bitumen pits, okay? They're all around the Dead Sea. And you can see from the picture that once again, the Bible is so very accurate. They're still there. Some of them are still molten, I guess you would say. Some are just as hard as a rock. But there you go. There's a picture example of that. Now, they weren't just tar pits, though. How do I know? Well, there's a little Hebrew idiom that I think is incredibly interesting. And because I'm doing the teaching, I get to tell you about it. Okay? Here's from my Bible software. Just an example. Now, of course, the top line is in English, and you'll see there along the middle is the Hebrew. Now, I want you to notice pits. Do you see anything about the words translated there that's peculiar? The words are repeated. Be'erot, be'erot. It's said twice. Now, what is that all about? The Hebrew actually literally says tar pit pit. These were pits. Okay? Now, why is that significant? Anytime you see a Hebrew word repeated like this, it's emphasizing that object. For example, God is not just holy. He's not just holy, holy. He's holy, holy, holy. God is so holy that no one can compare. There's no one like him. This is the Hebrew way of saying that. He's not just holy, he's holy, holy, holy. Well, in our passage today, these were pits. These were the pittiest of all possible pits. And these kings were so terrified by what was chasing them, they were diving into these things to hide. Now, the word fell in the Hebrew here is also the word used for falling prostrate before God. The English gives the idea that this happened, they just fell in, that it was just an accident. No. They didn't trip and fall. They were diving for cover. When God shows up, you don't just fall down. You're purposefully diving to the ground because you're scared to death. It's God. That's the idea that's happening here. There's just no other place to hide in the desert. Again, I want to show you where else they going to hide. There's nothing out there. So they're diving in the pits. See, isn't that interesting? You can go home and tell your children and your grandchildren about the pittiest of all possible pits. Changes your life, doesn't it? Verse 11. So the enemy took all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions and went their way. So remember, we started this whole thing out with the reason that Lot and Abram split was because Lot wanted all this wealth. Well, it's all gone now. Those greener pastures, it's busted. Everything he put his hope in, everything he put his trust in is gone. And now Moses is telling us all of this for a very important reason. And folks, it's this. We got to be careful about where we place our faith. We got to be careful. We spend a lot of mental and physical energy planning for things that, and putting our faith in things that, if we're very honest, can just be snatched away in a moment by forces that are completely out of our control. Here you have Abram, who's staying in the land, who's at least attempting to place his faith in God. You know, he fails sometimes. He does gloriously wonderful at others. But here's Lot. who's not interested in God at all. It's all about the greener pastures and the economic opportunity. And the Bible is giving this to you so that you'll recognize that truth. That, you know, true wisdom is placing your faith in something that will not go away, something that will not budge, something that will not move. Someone who is eternal and unshakable. And folks, I don't know about you, but the only thing I can think of is the God Most High. I mean, where else can you go? Nobody can take away your salvation. They can take your life, they can take your stuff, they can take your family. They cannot take your eternity away from you. They cannot take your relationship with the Lord. Uh, do we chase after what the world is offering us, telling us, this is where real freedom is found? Um, when the reality is, I don't know if it's really freedom, right? I'm not real sure it's freedom. But all that being said, Lot and the Sodomites, people from Gomorrah, they lost everything. It's all gone. Verse 14. They also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who was dwelling in Sodom, and his possessions, and went their way. That's the second time they went their way. It's just like, it was no problem. We just snatched it up and we took off. Number 4, Lot and all of his stuff is captured. If you were not killed in those days, you were facing a lifetime of slavery. That's just it. And if you were a slave, your chance of living for more than a few years was pretty small. So Lot here, he goes from riches to slavery. It's not looking too good for Lot and his bunch. Verse 13. Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, by the way, first time Abram is called a Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and of Aner. These were allies of Abram. When Abram heard that his kinsman had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. If you're wondering where Dan is the very northern tip of Israel. Okay? If you know where the big mountain at the north end. Anyway, Dan sits right at the southern base of that big mountain. Number 5, Abram comes to the rescue. Now, I just want to ask you guys, when you think of Abram, I mean, what comes to mind? A shepherd guy, out there taking care of sheep. You don't think special forces.
Yeah, you don't think of
You don't think. This was the first iteration of the Mossad, I guess. I don't know. How big was Abram Inc. to have this many people? Not only to have this many people, have this many trained people. If he has 318 trained men at his disposal, good grief, what did he have going on? And that's just men. That's just men who are of the age, you're thinking young men, probably older than 15, 16 years old, younger than me. But anyway, if you count women, children, male and female servants, it has to be over 1,000, right? I mean, this is a massive operation. Before I started studying the scriptures, it never dawned on me that there was this much going on. This adds a whole different dynamic to how we see Abram. I mean, Abram was at least as large as planes, moving around, living in tents. To me, that's just fascinating. It's crazy. And on top of that, Abram is about to attack 4 of the most powerful armies on the planet at the time with only 318 men. And he doesn't appear to hesitate at all. Now, this is stunning because he asked his wife to lie about being his wife just a few years before this, scared to death because his wife is hot. But then his nephew comes up missing and he's ready to go to war. Does something seem screwy there to you? I don't know. It kind of does to me. You know, lots in trouble. Come on, boys, we're going to war. And everybody that these four armies, this group of four had come up against, they had smoked. But Abram decides, I'm going to take my guys. And they're trained up, which makes you also think that Abram was some sort of military leader who had trained them. All of this sounds like a really dumb idea to me. But here goes Abram, willing to lay down his life for his nephew who had sold him out for money. Honey, lie. I don't want him to hurt me because you're hot. It just doesn't really make sense, but neither do we most of the time. So there we go. Verse 15. And he divided his forces against them by night. Strategy. There's a stratagem to this and his servants. And defeated them and pursued them to Hobah, north of Damascus. Then he brought back all the possessions and also brought back his kinsman Lot with his possessions and the women and the people. Abram is a stud. I don't know how else you could say it. He's not only apparently a pretty good guy, savvy money-wise, but he's also got some military experience from where? I don't know. But it's obvious he's splitting up groups. He's dividing his forces. He's coming in at night. I mean, these are guerrilla tactics. This is right out of SEAL Team 6 type stuff going on here, Trained special forces against these powerful enemies, and he wins. He not only wins, he dominates. Well, how can you say he dominates? Because he brought all the stuff back. Crazy to me. I mean, this sounds like something Arnold Schwarzenegger would do, I don't know. One of those movies from the 80s and 90s. They don't make those movies anymore, unfortunately. But anyway. And on top of that, he pursues them. They're running from him. Him and his 318 commandos. Two things as we close up that I want you to take away from this. First off is God praised Abram for going to war. This is one of these things, some of your more, never mind. I shouldn't finish that sentence. This is a truth that some have a hard time buying. Look in verse 19. This is chapter 14, verse 19. Blessed be Abram by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. Now, this is coming from Melchizedek. We'll talk about him next time. We won't be meeting next week, just a reminder. 2 weeks from today. Talking about Melchizedek, a priest of God Most High. But God honors, through the priest, the king priest, Melchizedek, God honors Abram for this action. Now, what does that tell you about God's heart and about military justice? Abram's not playing patty cake with these people. He's conquering them. This is a military action. There's no diplomacy going on here. This is war. And sometimes, under the right circumstances, war is justice. War is right. Abram is killing others for the sake of justice and mercy. These tyrannical people had been exploiting these weaker neighbors and being violently attacked by God's man, and God is celebrating the fact that Abram did just that. And as Christians, we can get so soft and squishy about these types of things and believe that true Christians, could never do what Abram did. That is not in the Bible. The Bible is very much saying if the cause is just, righteous, it's protecting those who are being exploited, then yeah, a Christian is obligated to protect and rescue. Um, I'll go to my grave thinking fighting Hitler in Europe was a just action. I will go to my grave thinking that standing up against the Soviet Union, although mishandled in many areas, the original idea was the right idea. Hitler was a monster. Um, you know, I know we have people in our history that ain't the best. But there are times when this is correct. There are times when war and violence is the right thing to do. So that's the first takeaway. Second takeaway, Abram risked his life for the wicked. You know? He not only saved Lot's life, who, you know, betrayed him for financial reasons, but he rescued the Sodomites here. Sodom and Gomorrah, who were wicked in the sight of God. Abram doesn't just rescue Lot, he rescues some of the most wicked people on the face of the earth in the history of the earth. He's willing to lay down his life for those people. Now, let me ask you something. Who does that sound like? There is one who came down out of heaven, safe, comfortable on his throne, and he leaves it all and comes into the world not only willing to risk his life, but also laying down his life to rescue a people who have betrayed him, who have sold him out, who are sinful and wicked to the bone. What we often see in the Old Testament, through the example of some of its heroes, are these brief snapshots of who Jesus would eventually be. And Abram, in this instance, is one of those brief little snapshots. It's quite the story. Yeah, we'll talk about Melchizedek next time. All right. Again, remember, no meeting next week. Thanksgiving, we'll pick it up, whatever, I don't know, what's the date? 30th? December 3rd. We'll be back here at noon on December 3rd, okay? Questions, comments, anybody?